The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's Thursday, the 20th day of March, 2025. Welcome to Bermuda's Daily Talk Show. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House, Lindo's, and People's Pharmacy. I'm Jamal Hartman, and Maya Palacio will be with us in a bit to bring you the latest in the news break brought to you by People's. It's Thursday. How's everyone feeling today? We made it. Someone said to me one day, Thursday really is Friday Junior, and I had never looked at it like that. The day before Friday, Friday Junior. So get excited for those who work traditional work weeks on Monday through Friday. Your day is coming. Your day is coming. But happy Thursday. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and if you're somewhere ahead of us, good evening, good night. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for making us part of your daily routine. A good one today as we welcome Emperial Group's Eugene Dean onto the show. We're going to be discussing his plans post-election. As you know, he had a bid in the most recent general election where he came out pretty late and announced himself as a candidate. So we'll be speaking to him about what his plans are going forward, not only in the political space, but just the community space and how he intends to utilize his expertise to help improve Bermuda beyond the political space. The Daily Play is a Name That Place today. Name that place. All right. And then do us a favor. Don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. All right, folks. Suzanne Ingham says, awesome thinking Thursday, Jamel and Maya, Friday Eve, and an awesome Thursday to you. And she is celebrating the arrival a bit later of Eugene Dean. Yes, he will be here. All right, so folks, Kenton Trott says, good morning, TDH. Love that blue shirt, bro. You know, I have a pick to burn or burn to pick. You know what I mean, folks, with Mr. Trott. I don't know if you know this, but my father's an Outerbridge, folks. My family is from Baylor's Bay. Well, Mr. Kenton Trott is a St. David's guy. And, you know, he took some shots on Twitter X. So our brethrenship is a bit splintered. So I guess he and I are going to be having some intense wars this summer. But I think we agree on the blue side and the St. George's side. And, you know, unfortunately, it looks like our guest today has a Somerset flag in his background. So I'm representing today the St. George's. But we're gonna have a chat. Yeah, he says only for Connie his St. David's. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll have it out. We're gonna have to have some friendly bets this summer. Teresa Amarie says good morning to you as well, folks. Let's we've got some stuff to talk about before we bring Eugene in, and this is the daily discussion brought to you by our friends at Titan Tours. Hey, folks, real quickly before we even do that, Titan Tours has this tour going on right now, and I think the Daily Hour crew, we're going to try to join it, and we would like for some of you to join us. We'll get some details to you soon, probably next month. But they have this fish sandwich tour they're doing with the Bermuda Tourism Authority. I'm going to be real with you. I love a little food tour. If you remember the Daily Hour, we did a restaurant crawl a couple years ago, and some of you attended. Tell the audience how great it was if you did. But I'm looking forward to participating in this fish sandwich tour with Titan. And I want to remind people, stuff like that is just not available for visitors to Bermuda. Get out, enjoy it, experience it. There are more things to do wait for it, than going to bars and drinking. There are more things to do than going to party. There are more things to do than sitting behind the computer screen. So go check that out. But it is the daily discussion brought to you by our friends at Titan Express and Secure Trucking.
The daily discussion is brought to you by Titan Express and Secure. Visit TitanEXBDA.com, your leading tour and transport provider specializing in Black History tours throughout the island. And SecureBDA.com for all your property management, waste management, residential, and commercial trucking needs. Professional, punctual, and reliable service is our commitment to you.
Hey, you all, real quickly, before we get into daily discussion, I put on some, I think this represents spring, but when does spring begin? Actually, let me Google that. When does spring begin? I think someone told me earlier this week. Maybe it was Mia. When does spring, let's Google. When spring begins. This year's first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere occurs precisely at 5:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're 2 hours into spring on March 20th. Yeah, today, March 20th. So we're 2 hours into happy spring, everybody. Happy, how's it? Look at that. I'm weird. I know. Suzanne Ingham says spring begins today. Jody Yu says first day of spring. Isn't it today? I forgot, you all. I forgot. So yeah, happy spring to you, everybody. Happy spring. I hope that you're feeling springy this morning. I did that. I thought of that all by myself. Hedley is one. She says it was 2022 and it was delicious. Bruce and I loved it. You guys were in the restaurant, Crow? Forgive me. I'm not trying to get beat up by the Swans. I just don't remember. The food was so good. I was intoxicated off the great food. I honestly don't remember though. I don't remember. So forgive me. All right, let's get into today's question. We got to get serious, guys. We got to get serious. So today's question, I'll read a bit from the Royal Gazette. So the Royal Gazette last week, chief reporter Sarah Legan, the title was Report Reveals 1,100 Homeless in Bermuda. So it goes on to say there were 1,101 people experiencing homelessness in Bermuda at the end of last year. The charity Home has documented it in its 2024 annual report. That is 290 more people than the previous year, despite Home preventing or sustainably ending homelessness for 85 people. It equates to just under 2% of Bermuda's population experiencing homelessness, compared with estimates of 0.2% in the United States and 0.6% in Britain. Home finalized its plan to end homelessness last year after engaging with related agencies in conjunction with the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors. The plan details a strategy to tackle the problem, complete with evidence-based recommended actions. They said the charity that the part of the reason for the increase is a greater acceptance of self-identification by the hidden homeless, those who may not be captured in official data, including sofa surfers and those living in inadequate conditions. Well, let's address this. Let's have a conversation this morning. Let's talk about this. All right. Question of the morning is, what are your thoughts on homelessness in Bermuda? And I'm glad that they mentioned the couch or sofa surfers, right? Because when Denise Carey had come on this show, she's the executive director, I believe, of Home. We spoke about that because homelessness doesn't just mean people who sleep on the streets. It could mean someone who's sleeping on someone's couch, right? They're living in a home, but they don't have a necessarily fixed abode, right? They're not necessarily a legal resident of that place. But how can we fix it? What do you think? Obviously, one of the leading causes is the cost of living. But what do you? That's a huge number for Bermuda. And I want us to understand something, and I share this because in 2018, I believe it was 2018 or 2017, I had made a comment on Facebook that about us, and having a bit of humility, because many of us are or know someone who is one paycheck away from struggling. Many of us know someone like that. We spoke about savings and emergency funds and pensions. And people say, well, Jamel, it's hard to save in this economy. It's difficult. And my response to that is sacrifice. How many of us are willing to sacrifice, are able to sacrifice, have the opportunity to sacrifice? And what do I mean by that? You have some families who maybe they don't get along, so they're not willing to live together. You have some people who don't respect their families, so their families don't want them to live there. Can we change some things about ourselves to fix the greater problem? What I'm trying to do right now is really get us as individuals to understand that if nothing has been proven to us over the last decade or two, is that we can't rely on others to fix our problems and shape our destiny. Some of these things are on us and within us to fix. I'm not sure if the premier, the government has a magic wand, but that's not going to change our circumstance. What can we do to address homelessness? So what are your thoughts on homelessness? And what do you believe someone impacted by homeless, do you know someone impacted by homelessness in Bermuda? Yes or no? And let me put the QR code up because that is a question where you may want to remain anonymous, but do you know someone impacted by homelessness in Bermuda? Yes or no? We got to share the QR code as well, because we do know that some people are unable to do the QR code. But let's put the link. Put the link in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and the website. But do you know anyone who is impacted by homelessness? Now, it doesn't mean that they may be the homeless person, but they may have a child or a relative that they're helping support that is in a homeless situation, right? But do you know someone impacted by homelessness? And what are your thoughts? How can we fix homelessness in Bermuda? How can we ensure that we're doing our part along with a charity and organization like Home? Let's go to the audience. Sean Smith says, incentivize the construction industry to build affordable homes. Sean, I no longer know what that means. I no longer know what affordable home means. What does that look like? And what would the incentives be? What do the incentives look and feel like? If you can provide some context, that's all. Not that I disagree, but what does that look like? Do you know someone impacted by homelessness? Adeline Swan says, unfortunately, yes. Meditation, Gypsy says yes. Nicole Walker says yes. Right. And I would expect that there will be a lot of yeses because Bermuda is only so big, right? It's a very small community. So how do we, what do we do? How do we address this? Do we have, I speak to people all the time who they may have a home and they have apartments and they don't want to rent their apartments out, which is, in my opinion, they're right because of bad experiences they've had. Do we need to give more power to landlords? Has rent control impacted homelessness? Has the increase in Airbnbs impacted it? Have landlords decided they don't want to rent because of the rules are not in favor of them? But we need to address it. I don't know the answer. I'm going to be honest with you. That's why we're here having this conversation. What are your thoughts, audience? What can we do? Suzanne Ingham says homelessness is growing quickly. Ask Omar Dill about that because he definitely knows that's his area. What's really rubbed me the wrong way was during the pandemic, many list their homes, which was devastating, and I was furious because they're on the street. Families on the street. So how do we solve that? What's the solution, folks? How do we solve this problem? Manifestation and Meditation Gypsy says, according to the news last night, there are 1,000 people homeless in Bermuda. Yes, as I read just now from the Royal Gazette on the 14th of March, they reported 1,101. So 1,101 people experiencing homelessness in Bermuda at the end of last year. And that was documented in the Home 2024 annual report. So that's an increase of 290 people year over year. That's 2% of Bermuda's population experiencing homelessness. And who's to say it wouldn't be more if we would not have had the amount of people who have left Bermuda? This is a big problem, folks. A huge problem. But how do we fix it? If you or someone you know has been impacted by it, how do we fix it? That's a serious question. How do we fix this? What do we do? I don't believe in forcing people to rent their homes. That hasn't gone well for a lot of homeowners. We see the struggles of Salvation Army. I believe, was it Salvation Army that shut down the thrift store? We see that many charities are even struggling at this time. So what do we do? How do we help this situation? What are the answers to addressing homelessness in Bermuda? Where do we go from here? What can businesses do? As Sean Smith mentioned, incentivize construction workers. To do what? What do those incentives look like? Or do we care? Because as I said yesterday about the hospital situation, we have a community where we tend not to care until things directly impact us. Do we care enough about the homelessness situation? I don't know, folks. It's not a pretty picture. It's not a pretty picture. We're going to bring Maya Palacio in for the Daily Hour news break. And don't forget, we've got Eugene Dean coming up. And yes, Suzanne Ingham's confirming what I had said, that yes, it was Salvation Army that shut down their thrift shop. Very sad indeed. Yeah, it is sad. And if you know, that's one of Maya's favorite things, a thrift shop. All right. It's very sad. And you want to ask yourself, is that a reflection of people having less to donate? I don't know. All right. This is your daily discussion brought to you by our friends at Titan Express and Secure. We've got Maya Palacio coming up with the news break in a few.
The daily discussion is brought to you by Titan Express and Secure. Visit TitanEXBDA.com, your leading tour and transport provider specializing in Black History tours throughout the island. And SecureBDA.com for all your property management, waste management, residential, and commercial trucking needs. Professional, punctual, and reliable service is our commitment to you.
All right. One comment before we bring Maya in. Teresa Marie says it's sad, but I agree, Jamel, that those who are able need to consider living with family or sharing space with another until they can find optimal solutions. I've happily welcomed 3 among family and friends into my home for 6 months to a year. Yeah. And I want to say this, like if someone's in that situation and they have a family or a friend who welcomes them into their space, respect it. Respect it. Because I think that's a big problem that we face. Respect their space. Sean Speech Johnson says, if you're not making 5G a month, you can't survive on your own. You have to be in a relationship or live in a family house. I want to address this real quickly. So a lot of Black people in particular say that the family unit is what's caused so many problems, right? You know, the family unit meaning a couple household and children, whatnot. That's what capitalism was built for. It was built for a family to be able to survive, like 2-income household. No, there are people on their own who can make what 2 people make or do make that. But yeah, that's what it was really created for, right? So I don't disagree with you, Sean Speech Johnson. But hey, we shame the family unit so much, right? That's just what the era we're living in. Hasn't really worked out well politically. Anyway, Sean Smith says financial incentives offer tax breaks, subsidies, while low interest loans, zoning, and land use reforms allow density bonuses for affordable units, implement inclusionary zoning policies, to name a few. Thank you for that, Sean. Appreciate that. And manifestation and meditation. Gypsy says, yep, the system is not set up for single people. It's not. But again, we've pushed this narrative, and you have to ask yourself, why do we push this narrative of the anti-family unit? Maybe it's to help those who benefit from the system greatly, right? But I don't think we give much thought beyond our feelings sometimes. All right, let's bring Maya Palacio in for Daily Hour News Break. And after that, we've got Eugene Dean coming up. Looking forward to the conversation. Stick with us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Greetings, MP. How are you?
You know, I'm doing pretty well this morning. Just adding a little bit more context to the thrift store closed down, because when I read that, I was hurt. But I do recall going there. They do get a lot of donations. The main priority really for shutting it down was the fact that they need to focus on other things that are necessary and more needed in the community. Whether that be the beds, giving home, like housing, food. They looked at what was more prevalent and needed, and that seemed to take over the thrift store. I know it's hard not to have it, but we have had many other thrift stores pop up, which they did mention in their press release as well, that there's so many other ones where people can go to now still. And they were definitely still getting a lot of clothing and donations. I got to visit the back room once, and it was stacked. So they were still getting donations. But yeah, that was the primary reason they want to focus and shift on the other things that are more necessary within the community, which we're talking about this morning, which is housing and food.
Got it. Yeah. So you got to cut some rid of these. Yeah.
Yeah. It does hurt. Trust it. When I saw that, all the memories popped back in my head of all the times my mother and my sisters and I went there to get clothes and everything growing up. But yeah, there are a lot of other places though that people can go to. All right.
You don't want to share her spots with you, or you going to take her stuff.
There's been a lot more though since the last time I remember reporting a story. There was like 12, I think, at this point. We're hitting the moon, maybe 17 thrift stores in Bermuda, actually. So there's a lot, and they keep popping up. All right, so good morning, everyone. This is your Daily Hour News Break brought to you by the good people at People's Pharmacy. So I did a bit of a deep dive into Bermuda's juvenile justice evolution, I guess you can call it, and what we are doing, and will it actually work with these new amendments that were actually mentioned in the 2025 throne speech. So here's the story, pretty in depth, but stick with it.
1999, Magistrate Carlisle Grievous issued a scathing critique of Bermuda's Youth Offenders Act of 1950, arguing that it failed to hold repeat juvenile offenders accountable. He called for stricter sentencing, military training, and stronger intervention of measures. The story came from the Royal Gazette as the magistrate was frustrated over the reoffending of a 15-year-old who stole a total value of goods exceeding $4,000. The youth had a string of convictions dating back to 1994. Fast forward to 20 years later, in 2019, Fiona McGritter wrote a story on the matter of harsher punishments being enacted. The law had not changed, but the use of which it was implemented had increased. It read, quote, schoolboys aged 14 to 15 were locked up at the co-ed facility as recently as this year, despite laws designed to prevent the detention of children unless in exceptional circumstances. In the story, the ruling by Justice Mark Pettingill found that a 15-year-old boy was wrongfully held at the co-ed facility with the complicity of the Department of Child and Family Services. In another case, police officers handcuffed a compliant 15-year-old at his school and took him into custody, a move Justice Pettingill described as an overreach of authority. These cases echoed the 1999 incident, raising concerns that Bermuda's justice system continues to struggle with how to handle youth offenders fairly and effectively. The Young Offenders Act, first introduced in 1950, was meant to ensure that children were not treated like adult criminals, and it was recently amended to raise the legal definition of a child from under 16 to under 18. More recently, in the 2025 throne speech, the government stated that during this session, the government will address law reform by making amendments to the Young Offenders Act of 1950 to modernize the treatment of young people impacted by the criminal justice system, commencing with an increase to the age of criminal responsibility from 8 to 14. Notably, the National Reduction Strategy released in 2024 has also been an overarching solution to reduce violence among young people in Bermuda. Their overall strategy plans to outline a comprehensive approach to prevention, intervention, reintegration, relocation, enforcement, improved collaboration, and public awareness campaigns, with the ultimate goal of reduction of violence and antisocial behavior in Bermuda at all age groups. But going back to the two juxtaposing stories, in 1999, there was a call for harsher punishment. In 2019, we saw evidence of mistreatment under the law. What has been proven to work? Rehabilitation has been the proven method. Here's a glimpse of a panel discussion in Australia which highlighted these very topics.
We're failing at this. It's not working. It's like the war against drugs. It's just not working. We have to try something different. You can't arrest your way out of a crime wave. And you have to ask, well, what's motivating it? And if it's social media, we've got to find ways of dealing with the performative aspect of it. And if we listen to the people who work with the offenders, the youth workers, the criminal justice people, the parole officers, they'll all tell you the same thing. You can't just fight it by trying to arrest everyone.
Here's the thing about offending youths. Very often, they are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds themselves. They are coming from backgrounds where they've faced harm and violence and neglect and abuse. So these offenders are actually victims themselves.
Youth violence is prevalent globally. Our cousin islands have also faced numerous crimes. Jamaica, reported in 2020 by Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson, says that 875 major crimes which were committed in Jamaica from 2019 to 2020 were carried out by perpetrators between the ages of 15 and 17 years old, and these do not include minor crimes or arrests. In the Cayman Islands, they reported in 2021 their struggles with punishment in an article that read, as it stands now, juvenile offenders are housed in the same building with adult prisoners in a separate annex of the building. However, this doesn't always prevent interactions between juveniles and adult prisoners. Bermuda statistics provided by the Bermuda Police Service shared that in 2019, we had 140 arrests of persons 18 years and younger, which positively has reduced to 69 by 2022. So, we know the government will reconvene. We know they are looking to amend many laws. But in the case of Bermuda's youth and the 75-year-old law, is raising the age of criminal responsibility enough? Or does Bermuda need a fundamental shift in how it treats young offenders? And are we doing enough as a community for our younger generation?
You know, Maya, I want to go to the beginning of that story. Thank you for that. I think problem number one for me is, and I'll say this publicly, I've never met the man, but I don't like the man. Carlo Greaves, the judge. When I go back and read some of this stuff over the case he's overseen, it just always came across like he had such disdain for black males, from sentencing to the way he treated them. Now, criminals are criminals. Like people need to face consequences. But the fact that, and it takes you back to, you know, Maya, if you ever done any studies on capital punishment and parents giving their children like physical licks, you'll know that it all goes back to slavery, right? Where, the parents would literally beat their child so that their child doesn't have to get beaten from the masters, right? And so it was a bit, and that's where it literally trickled down. And you even now you hear like in the Tyler Perry movies, oh, we need to beat these children, and you hear parents saying it like it means something. That did not. What they're not realizing is we actually got here where we are today with the violence because you thought violence was discipline, right? And so, and Carl agrees what he said. It seems so violent and how to address it. Military training, this and that. Folks, you all may think therapy and assistance is weak, but I tell you what, criminalizing teenagers didn't take them away from criminal behavior. You're putting them in environments where, okay, if you take them off the street, you put them in co-ed facilities, you lock them up, that's shaping their life. Now, I'm no expert. I'm not a counselor. But I could tell you one thing, and I used to say this about conscription all the time. Anyone who told me it was about discipline and shaping our young men, I just thought at the time you were an idiot. But I don't think you're an idiot anymore. I just think that we're misled. And why do I say that? Hate to compare us with dogs, but Maya, you love pets, and you know this. It's easier to train a puppy than it is to train a dog. So we need to get young people when they're young. I'm a result of that. When my mother went to Dr. Ewart Brown, that was her doctor. Dr. Brown said, you need to get this boy some therapy. He needs help. I was in therapy from a very young child. I wasn't criminalized until I started fighting against conscription. So I appreciate what you did, but we as a community have to stop looking at violence as the answer to violence. Stop thinking that, oh, we need to go back to beating children. That's why we're here, folks. Not the only reason, but another thing that was brought up in that, Maya, was the large percentage of young people who come from certain situations, like bad situations, right? And I don't think people quite understand abuse. And let me say something to you this morning. Smoking around your child, getting high and drunk around your child is a form of abuse, you know. It's not just physical. Cursing and carrying on and having adult conversations is a form of abuse. You're shaping that a child's mind is like a sponge. It's like a sponge. I'm done. I'm sorry. I know.
No, we could talk about this for quite a long time. It is like going into this story, I definitely found out a little bit more than, I had initially thought I would. I was trying to compare us again, like trying to compare with the other cousin islands to see like, okay, well, what are they doing in terms of, practicing reform, or like where are they, holding space for these young children to like grow and advance. And yes, the ages of like where they've implemented or amended, it's a positive. At the same time, there's so much that needs to be done, especially within our system, because even hearing about what's even in place now, just in our own prison up at Westgate, whether it be reform, what does that look like? How is it being done? Are people actually being able to take the courses that are necessary for them? Are they available to them? All those questions that like still haven't quite come out to light or been highlighted, but we know that Minister Kim Wilkerson, like she said, that she had visited the prisons. In the briefing the other day with the premier, she said that, they are trying to reform things inside there, and that's a task they're taking on. But this has also been something that's been mentioned for years. It's not a new subject. It's not a new thing that we're talking about that needs to be fixed or solved. Like even in the Violence in Paradise, Death in Paradise lecture that was up at Bermuda College, how many years ago? These are continuing problems that still we haven't gotten sufficient answers to, yet alone have they been solved. So again, it's a conversation that sparks generationally, and with our young people starting up with this conversation here, just looking into, again, what was mentioned in 2025, throne speech, what are our next steps and how do we fix this? And as a community, like I ended it off, how do we help assisting it, and not just leaving it to the government and the law?
Absolutely. We have a role to play. And our minds and mentality needs to shift in order to fix this problem.
Now, any other news, quite briefly, but concerning that we need to be wary of, is that the Bermuda Police Service is seeking the public assistance in locating 15-year-old Bermudian national Nigel Smith. Now, Mr. Smith is described as being 5 foot 9 inches in height, a slim build, blonde complexion with black and brown hair worn in dreadlocks. He was last seen around 9:15 p.m. on Wednesday, March the 19th, so yesterday night, in Eliona Drive up in Devonshire. So his attire at the time was unknown, but Mr. Smith is thought to be in the company of 16-year-old Keith Richardson Jr. Now, Mr. Richardson is also a Bermuda national, described as being 5 foot 8 inches tall, slim built, dark complexion with black hair worn low. So he was last seen around 9:25 on Wednesday, March 19th in the area of Devonshire. So if anyone knows anything about the whereabouts of 15-year-old Nigel Smith or 16-year-old Keith Richardson Jr., the ask to please call the main police number at 295-0011, or again, the Department of Child and Family Services at 278-9111.
All right, thank you.
All right. So closing up with our weather today, it's going to be generally sunny out there for everyone that's, back home in Ireland. So that's really great. And it's going to be a high of 71. So it doesn't call for any rain, but, just still be mindful of it. But it's going to be pretty sunny. So get out there in the sun.
All right. Thank you for that, Maya. It's International Day of Happiness. Audience, I want to know what makes you happy. International Day of Happiness. What makes you happy, Maya?
Jeez, I feel like that's such a loaded question. What makes me happy? I'll go with my grandma. My grandma really makes me happy. Whenever I think about her or spend time with her and have the opportunity to just like have a yapping session, I think she's probably one of the most funniest people ever, and also just really inspiring, to be honest. So yeah, my grandma really makes me happy.
What makes you happy, audience? I mean, people think nothing makes me happy, which is not further from the truth. Couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of things make me happy, honestly. But I think what makes me happy is seeing my nieces smile and laugh. Like, because, they laugh at, well, they don't really laugh at my jokes, but I make them smile.
Tolerate it?
Yeah, they tolerate. They think I'm crazy. They look at me weird when I say stuff, but no, seeing them makes me happy. It's happy seeing them happy. All right, so that's what I'm going with, my nieces. Anybody else? What makes? Oh, come on, audience, you're not as bad as people think I am. Like, something's got to make you happy out there. Something. All right, MP. Have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you for an awesome story, and we've got Eugene Dean coming up. So we'll see you soon, MP.
See you soon.
All righty. My applause to you, folks. If you've appreciated the conversation thus far, make sure whatever platform you're on, be it Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, X, or Instagram, give us a like, love, follow, share the conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about, let's say 2 minutes, 12 seconds. And we've got Eugene Dean coming up. Stick with us.
People's ACW, located at King Edward VII Memorial Hospital, carries over-the-counter medicines, toys, cards, and even toiletries. Our knowledgeable staff are there whether you're at emergency, visiting family, or a member of BHB staff, to show you our best even when you're feeling your worst. People's ACW, we're here for you.
Hi there, welcome to Medical House. We're located at number 6 Bakery Lane. I can't wait to show you all of the great stuff that we carry. Come on inside, let's see. Long days, long shifts, you no longer have to endure comfortable underwear. Designed by nurses, we now offer premium undergarments by Swoop that are unique, fun, comfortable, and functional. The only underwear you'll ever want to wear. Who says high quality functional products can't be stylish and comfortable at the same time?
See it all at our new expanded location on Bakery Lane.
Welcome to the new bulk store, Lindo's Next Level. Wake up in the morning with enough coffee to keep you running throughout the entire day. Your pet at home deserves the best. Stock up on dog food to keep your puppy happy. Need a quick tasty lunch at home? Your chicken nuggets will be jumping right out of the freezer. What's a movie night without popcorn? You can never have too much. Lindo's Next Level. Why go anyplace else?
Unlock your business potential with BDC's General Microloan, offering up to $30,000 for Bermudian small and medium businesses, whether it's for inventory, working capital, or equipment. We provide 100% guarantee on approved loans. Simple application, low interest rates, and fast processing. Apply today and make your business dream come true.
Bermuda heat is no joke. Is your AC ready for summer? A quick tune-up now can keep you cool, save energy, and prevent costly breakdowns later. Call 2920881 or book your service online at bac.bm.
Alrighty, welcome back to the big show. We've got some folks in the audience, but welcome back to the big show. I'm Jamel Hartman. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House Lenders, and People's Pharmacy. Folks, don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. Again, if you've just tuned in, make sure you give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. Make sure you share the conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. I did ask what makes people happy. And Nicole Walker, she said, traveling to new places, being able to sleep in, and gardening. Dexter Smith says, what makes me happy is clean copy. We've got Suzanne Ingham says, waking up each day, my sons, my grands, work, my friends, just being alive. Matthew says, seeing people living their full potential and purpose, contributing to a cause that results in positivity and growth makes me happy. And James Burgess said, I would be happy if you get your bonsai tree growing right. Thank you, James. I appreciate you. See, he didn't throw my bun. You all, look, I've got some hate mail about my bonsai tree. I'm just getting into it, folks. And I'm not giving it back to the earth because have I watered it? Man, I haven't given it any love since I did the show last week. After the show, I'm going to put some water in there, all right? It's hard. Look, I'm not a parent. All right, give me some, ease me up. But thank you for recognizing bonsai. Anyway, folks, we've got a very important guest coming on. Let's give a warm TDH welcome. He's been on the show before, a community advocate, and he recently ran in the general election. Let's give a warm TDH welcome to Eugene Dean. Greetings, Eugene. What's happening?
Yes, greetings. How you doing, Jamal? And greetings, audience.
Eugene, I know you understand gardening and the earth and so on. Before I even ask you what makes you happy, did you see my bonsai tree?
I didn't see a bonsai tree, but I'm very intrigued by your comments.
Yeah, I want to get some. This is my bonsai tree. What advice would you give me?
Okay.
It's on life support. I was in Bermuda, so I didn't have anyone taking care of it for me.
I see. Well, it looks like it could do some natural light and just some general TLC. So I guess you acknowledge that you haven't watered it in a while. So just, taking care of. You have to give plants love just like people,
Yes. See, this is my first plant, folks. This is my first plant, and I've been pretty hard on me, but I'm gonna take care of it, Eugene. Appreciate you because I know you understand.
I'll connect you with my dad. He's got a real green thumb,
Okay, see, this is community. This is what community does.
Yeah.
Real quick, you gotta ask you. Winston Godwin says, "My wife Rashida Godwin makes me happy." I love that, Winston. Before we jump into the meat of the conversation, it is International Happiness Day. What makes you happy, Eugene?
Well, just people, community, nature, just communing with nature and just seeing people thrive in life and seeing people enjoying and living in accordance with their passions and things of that nature. I feel very blessed. I've had the opportunity to really be surrounded by things that I'm very passionate about for my entire life. And I've seen a lot of people grow in the midst of things that I've been involved with. And I've experienced a lot of growth from being involved with those things as well. So I'm very thankful for that. And family, there's so many things in life, I just really enjoy life, and I'm just very thankful for the opportunity I've had to even do things like this and converse with you and your audience, and all of those things contribute to me keeping a smile on my face every day. So give thanks.
Indeed. And we appreciate you giving yourself and making yourself available to actually engage the community in different spaces, various spaces. It's definitely appreciated. And I'll speak to that a bit later. But you decided to put your name forward in the most recent election. How did you feel about the results once they were final?
Well, I had a lot of insight into what it would look like in the event based on how things played out leading up to actual election day. I remember in a press statement that we shared, it said to the, what the PLP had labeled as the combined opposition, that either we work together or we lose together. By the time we actually got to the election day and people were reluctant to take up our vote for unity strategy, I already knew what the events would look like. We had already discussed the potential of vote splitting. And as a result, 7 of the seats that the PLP won in the election, they won with less than 50% of the votes, which means that, should a strategy been engaged that saw the opposition combine their efforts and focus more on the goal of replacing the government with a coalition rather than who they wanted to win the seat, then, it could have been 18-18 based on the current votes, which meant that the government we have today could have looked completely different. So with that said, I was already feeling somewhat disappointed at the fact that we weren't mature enough to engage a strategy that obviously could have yielded the results that we were looking for or moved us in that direction. However, I'm very pleased with the impact that we had during the election and the way we engaged the election and the way the current administration responded to our involvement has really put us in a very positive position today. So I can feel the elevation of our presence in the community. I feel the appreciation that people have shown for the work that we have done and that we continue to do. And I'm very thankful for all of that. So,
Yeah. So that said, I mean, people who know you know that, what kind of individual you are. You're very active in the community. Just explain to people how you plan to stay engaged throughout the community beyond politics for those who don't know.
Well, I guess what I say, I'm already very engaged, and actually, for many of the people that I work with, they may have seen the election as a distraction of sorts because there's so many other things going on. So, for example, today, as you mentioned, is the first day of spring, and 2 days from now is Earth Hour. I'm the chairman of the board for Green Rock, and Earth Hour is one of our biggest public campaigns annually. So, immediately after the election, I was jumping right back into that and working on raising awareness and raising sponsorship and getting the community involved. I actually have a press conference at 11 a.m. this morning as it relates to that and bringing all the different organizations and the corporations and things around the table who are participating in Earth Hour this year and announcing a lot of the activities that we have already lined up for people to get involved with. So that's one element. Since the election, we've met with several of the candidates, and the other political entities involved and had very good conversations, reflecting on what transpired and how we can combine our efforts to move forward. So that's happened. And just thinking about the topics that you discussed before bringing me on, a lot of that has to do with grassroots community and hardcore. And those are elements of the community that we most definitely represent. And so we have a number of programs that we have developed, and anybody who's looked at our website can see things that we've done in the past. They recognize that Dread and Baja is an organization that comes out of our group. And most people, our age will or older will remember the presence of Dread and Braha in the community and what our community looked like prior to all of the violence, because young people at that time were being managed by people who had a strong appreciation and love for the interests of young people because we're all driven by our interests. And so you had a lot more shows going on. You had clashes going on. You had, different events that really attracted young people. And those events weren't done just to make money. Those events were programs, right? And through those programs, young people were being engaged in a way where they were being shown certain principles and characteristics that, you know, it was important for them to embody. And as a result, Dread and Baja events, you know, went without violence, in spite of people being concerned of the type of people that the events would draw. So, you know, when we talk about things like youth violence, it's very important for us to go to the root, to understand where these things actually came from. Because prior to 98, we didn't have that problem. And then why did we have the problem afterwards? We talked a lot about broken promises from this administration. You know, if Dread and Baja was so strong, and if Dread and Baja was so critically involved in the PLP winning the election in 1998, why soon after that election did you see organizations like Dread and Baja disbanding? That's very critical, like for people to ponder. And these are the type of stories that haven't been told. And this is why we released our website. So anybody who's been on our website would see why. You know, the PLP is very aware of the role that Dread and Baja, members of our team, played in them winning the election in 1998. I was in a cabinet meeting with my partners where that was being discussed. Ewart Braun got emotional and cried and had to excuse himself when we were discussing this precise history. They openly acknowledged the role that our team played in them winning the election privately. They have just refused to acknowledge it publicly, right? And the other thing they refused to acknowledge is how they sought to cut the legs beneath us immediately after the election, because, you know, they have shown an unwillingness to work with people who aren't particularly signed off on being on their team exclusively, right? In fear of giving power to people who may at any given time use that power against them. Now, we're not particularly interested in power. What we're interested in is effectiveness. We're interested in a stable community, a strong community, a country that's thriving, and our people having their needs met. You know, but because political entities tend to be primarily interested in power over people, right? Those are the things that concern them about others. We tend to project our perspectives on other people, regardless of what the other people's perspectives are.
And I think anyone who understands what you're saying gets it. But for those who don't, it's the first time they're hearing this. How do we change not the narrative, but the actions? Like what do we do to hold them accountable, the elected government, to ensure that those with solutions are not just brushed to the side because they're no longer in that inner circle, right? Because at the end of the day, Bermuda's at a crossroads. You see homelessness, right? You see violence, right? We're scraping up bodies off our roads way too often as well. I'm going to be honest with you. I was in the barbershop a couple days ago, and I said to the fellas in the barbershop, I said, man, anybody who works for my company is smarter than me. Anybody I bring on smarter than me. I don't want to be the smartest person, right? I read an editorial in the Royal Gazette, was it last year or year before, where one of the statements was about the premier, you know, always wanting to be the smartest in the room, or, you know, whether that's true or not, I haven't been in the room with him. But in saying that, like, how do you address it? Because we have some serious issues, and it's going to take grassroots to fix them. You know, we can use these fancy words like holistic approach and this and that, but it's really going to take grassroots to fix it. What does that look like, and how do we do that as a collective?
Well, first of all, we need to be collective. We need to work together. You talked a bit about, you know, homelessness and the challenges we have with young people in the country. And it was brought up, the fact that families have found themselves divided communities have found themselves divided or non-existent in many regards. And so to that, like, we first have to really take a look at ourselves and understand why, when unity is strength, that we find ourselves like leaning into division. You know, what are the things that, you know, really held us together in the past? You know, now I brought this up in many conversations about what happened to the Black community in particular post integration. Prior to integration, we enjoyed a lot of success and a lot of strength because we were minding our own business, you know, and that doesn't mean like that, you know, we don't care about other people, but we were actually in a situation where we were forced to mind our own business because we weren't allowed to operate in other spaces. And in minding our own businesses, we built our own communities, we built strong families, we helped each other build our houses, you know, we catered to our schools and our young people, you know, we raised our children together. You know, we had the village, we had community stores, we had thriving businesses. And then integration happened. And we were so concerned about engaging the things that we didn't have access to before that we ended up leaving the things that actually were giving us strength. You know, now that wasn't a requirement of ours, and that wasn't forced on us. To be honest, right? Other communities were surprised to see us do that. You know, yet they welcomed the fact that all of a sudden now we were more interested in buying their clothes and purchasing things in their shops and their grocery stores and things of that nature, whilst our own establishments were dwindling. Now, as I said, we didn't do this intentionally, right? But what we lacked at that time was strong leadership. Leadership that could have showed us how to, through example, how to take advantage of the things we now had access to, whilst continue to develop the things that were currently giving us strength. And the absence of that leadership is the same thing that plagues us today. The leadership is weak. The current administration, right, when you tally up the votes, one, they got less than 50% of the total votes in the election. Two, was the lowest turnout in the history of elections in the country, right? Their votes equate to less than 27% of the electorate. So whilst they won the election, they do not have the support of the people, nowhere near it. And why don't they? Because their leadership hasn't been strong. People don't have confidence in their leadership, and people do not feel represented by the things that they're doing. Now, how do we address that? We need to come together as a community. We had the opportunity to replace the government in the last election, and even as a combined opposition, right? We denied ourselves the opportunity to work together to achieve that. You know, so again, those of us who put ourselves forward as candidates are being looked to by the community, right, to set examples. So we missed the opportunity to set a real strong example. Imagine if the candidates in the combined opposition showed a willingness to put their personal interests aside, right, for the betterment of the country, right? How many people would have been inspired to do that in their own situations? How many families who are currently divided could have used that example to say, you know what, I may not love my siblings, right, or like my siblings as much as I had hoped, but you know what? It's more important that we get beyond that and work together to ensure that our family is strong than me just sitting in whatever things I don't like about them. You know, so we missed an opportunity, and this is where leadership is really key. You know, and it's going to take some real strong leadership to move us out of the position we find ourselves in now, in the position that we would like to see ourselves in, and that's a position where we're thriving.
I want to touch on a couple of things you said. First, I want to go to integration. Just last week, we were having a conversation about DEI. And I'm going to use the Target situation to make your point that you were just making. And audience, really, really digest what is being said here. A lot of stuff is made for TV these days, right? You know that old saying about the revolution won't be televised. Well, we live so much on social media and the internet that we make things for video and TV, and we want to be superstars and so on, right? And so when I think of I'm going to use Target. So I went to Target, not this past Saturday, last Saturday, and I totally forgot that Black people supposed to be boycotting Target. But here's where I stand as a person who has risked my livelihood for a cause. Miss me with your boycotts if there's no end in sight. Meaning, what is the overall purpose? If the purpose of the boycott of Target isn't to build our own and support our own Target, then miss me with it. Eugene, you just explained something that I don't think a lot of young people understand. The reason why other groups were excited or so accepting that we began to support their entities and not our own is how we became the biggest consumers. They realized, oh, okay. Because we were happy that we could go into places that we could never go. It's like a child that they can't get in the club, right? Right? They can't because they don't have they're not got the ID to show they're old enough. Once they could get in, it's like, yeah, I made it, right? Yeah. So I want us to understand there's no difference between integration and DEI. We're literally doing it to ourselves. But again, as I think Bobby Sumner often says, many of us really are not fighting against the system to remove it or replace it. Many of us are fighting for a more comfortable position within the system that we know isn't good for us. So I'll end that right there. As far as the election, you mentioned less than 27% of the electorate voted for the PLP. Had Dwayne Robinson won last week, I believe, MP Robinson. And again, I've repeated this a couple of times since the show. I think the election result speaks more to the dismal performance of the One Bermuda Alliance than it does the PLP. And I'll tell you why. The PLP still won by a landslide in terms of number of seats, 25-11. Despite getting less votes than they did when they lost in 2012. If the OBA see this as a good thing that they gain some seats and they're not looking at it wholesome, then I think I'm right in saying I don't see that political party winning anytime soon. So I think when you say that, when I speak about accountability and the state of politics, I think the OBA are a bigger problem than the PLP because they're really just a placeholder, right? They don't possess what it takes to go, maneuver the PLP. So to your point about collaboration and working together, all this nonsense about what's it called? We have a constitution and this and that. At the end of the day, whatever's in your constitution is not going to get people to vote for you over the PLP, as has been proven, right? So that said, people are looking for alternatives. Now, it can be argued that the PLP won 7 seats with less than 50% of the vote. They still won them. And the fact that people chose to split between independents and others versus voting for you, that should speak to where the minds of the electorate are. Now, I want to shift gears a bit, and you can touch on anything I say. I want to shift gears a bit because last week, Sumner, who's known as a comedian in the community, he wrote something on Twitter X. He says, say what you like about Sophia Canonera, but at least she has the guts, he means, to stand up to the folks everybody else lays down to. No. Sophia Canonera was on election day. Trevor had her on video, and she irritated some people, right? And I even was like, oh no, this ain't good. Like, what is she doing? I spoke to someone and they reminded me. And again, sometimes we have to be humble and have some humility, right? Because Sophia's situation is really no different from mine with conscription. Her actions are really no different than mine. Maybe we approached it wrongly, right? And when I say approached it wrongly, based on who our audience is, not that we were wrong, but based on who our audience is, because people only understand things from their perception, right? But I responded to that tweet, Eugene, and I said, I'm conflicted with this because while I do believe that some stuff is over the top, my opinion, having fought similar causes in an aggressive manner, I get her. It's easy for those who've never risked anything in terms of social justice to criticize and question others who have, right? It's a very comfortable place to be. That said, she is a friend of yours, and I'm being very genuine in asking this. She's received a lot of criticism from various sectors of the public. I've been there. I know how it feels. It's not a good feeling, no matter how much you block out. How is Sophia Canonera doing mentally?
Well, give thanks. Sophia is a very strong woman, and yeah, it's really an honor and a privilege to have worked with her on community initiatives, for over 20 years now. And so Sophia's fine. The negative comments, they tend to spur on, to be honest with you. When you operate in spaces like this, right, one thing that is important to grasp is that it's far more important to understand than to be understood. Because most times you're largely misunderstood. When you possess vision and courage at a level beyond the capacity of most people, you tend to find yourselves in spaces that are questioned heavily. Because now you're going outside of the realm, right, of where people are operating. So you're in a space that's very unfamiliar. And when you're in a space that's unfamiliar, it's very easy for people to get confused about what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And generally, it takes a lot of time for the whole circle to form, in order for people to develop the type of rationale that says, oh, okay, so now I see why you were doing what you were doing. Because in the moment, it's very difficult to appreciate. Now, either you got the tough skin for that or you don't. And that's just the bottom line. And for Sophia, she definitely has it.
So let me ask you this then.
She goes at things,
let me ask you this. So what role do you believe public perception of individuals, right, plays in political support? And how do you believe people like yourself and Sophia can change that perception over time? Because let's be honest, it's a popularity contest, right? I said this before. One of your opponents, Jamal Simmons, right? He's not winning because it's him,
right?
Because it's a PLP spot. David Burt is not winning because people like David Burt. He's winning because it's a PLP area, so on. So if you, for instance, were PLP and Jamal Simmons was Emperial Group, Eugene Dean would be the MP, right? But how do we change public perception of, or do we change it? Do we just allow them to come around on their own?
Well, you make a valid point, because one of the concerns in the community is that people who are involved in the political arena, right, receive value from the organizations that they're associated with. And the two examples that you just used are really perfect examples of that. And there are many others. You know, there are very few people, if you really think about it, who have entered into the political arena who add value to the organization that they're a part of, more so than the organization adds value to them. And one way to determine that is to just imagine the person in the absence of that association, right? Eliminate anything that they have spoken to or achieved or been involved in association with that organization. And then ask the question, like who that person is. Then you will start to be able to see the people who add value to organizations and the people who benefit from the value that organizations add to them. Now, in terms of dealing with politics, obviously it requires an extreme amount of diplomacy because, you know, how do you manage engaging in controversial topics whilst maintaining, right, the relationship that you have with hundreds or thousands of people who at times may not understand, right, the area that you've moved into or that the position that you're holding. You know, so it requires like a lot of patience and, like I said, a lot of diplomacy, you know, appreciating who your audience is and how to communicate to that audience, appreciating where people are in their own evolution and being able to speak to them in a way that they can understand, or having a sense for when you've developed enough trust within the community to branch out in an area and to do things that may seem controversial without damaging, right, the respect that you've already garnered. And a lot of times it has to do with not just what you're doing, but how you do what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, people, whether they agree with you or not, right, can respect the principles you stand on and the characteristics that you exemplify. You know, so this is where personal development becomes key in being able to deal with this. And for all of us who are in this arena, you're learning on the job, right?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it takes a lot of development and growth.
Yeah, indeed. Audience, if you have any questions or comments for Eugene, you can send them through. We'll get through as many as possible. Sean Smith's asking, Eugene, what are your thoughts on the throne speech? Did you hear anything you liked?
To be honest with you, you know, I tend to avoid things like the throne speech because of the level of frustration that comes from the things that are said in them. You know, we tend to deal with a lot of broken promises in politics. You know, it's a lot of things that are said because the understanding is that that's what people want to hear. But the means to actually follow through on these things very rarely exist. And so for someone like me who operates in spaces where the rubber is constantly hitting the road, you know, I'm more drawn to things that tend to be more concrete and statements that are far more integral and honorable. You know, we have a lot of these titles associated with people who have been elected. You know, it doesn't necessarily define their actions clearly. You know, so yeah, the throne speech for me is neither here or there. It's more like, you know, I'm more concerned about what you're doing rather than what you're saying, because talk can be very cheap and actions speak far louder than words, you know.
Yeah. Eugene, how can, look, we speak to people being involved, right? There are people who, I've said this for ages, like literally since 2007 when I first got into radio in Bermuda, that our power lies in more than just a vote. While I understand people sacrificed and died for our right to vote, I don't truly believe that people go beyond politics. I don't like to toot my own horn, but like yourself, I've been very active in, you know, my community as well, right? Whether it's coaching, mentoring, or just any form of community service. I think we live in a time where social media has just made us believe that if we're outspoken and we have a voice and we have opinions, that we're making a difference. And yes, times evolve. That could possibly be true. It could, put you out there. But what would you say to someone like, I mean, obviously, if they wanted to get involved with Emperial Group, like how would you advise someone to go about holding the government accountable and even working with yourself going forward?
Well, one, it's going to take a lot of hard work because, obviously the current administration or any administration benefits from the financial and human resources that are already embedded within the government. And those resources can be leveraged to push forward their programs, regardless of whether the programs are valid or beneficial for the populace or not. In the community, we have to find the means to raise the level of our game to be able to meet the standards that the current administration is able to achieve and even exceed beyond that without having the financial or human resources at our disposal. So with that in mind, if anybody is interested in getting involved with any of the initiatives that we have developed, then there are a litany of them. And they really require people who are willing to dedicate time and energy. And it's going to take sacrifice. The sacrifice always comes before the reward. There is no easy answer. It's not about like showing up and being like, okay, I can help for 2 hours. While that may be helpful with some things, really what's needed is people who are willing to come around the table and be involved, for a sustained period. No, it's not to say that you have to be involved 7 days a week, but if you choose to give one evening a week, and on that evening every week or one day on the weekend or weekends or whatever it is that you make yourself available for, if you're prepared to be consistent with that, right, and apply all your skills and expertise during that time frame, then that can be very beneficial. And really, I'm a representative of the Emperial Group, and there are a lot of people that I represent in that regard. There's a lot behind me that is not seen in the way that I'm seen. So when you saw the whole campaign roll out and the ads that went out and the press statements that are written and the speeches that are made, it's a lot of support behind that. I am not standing as an island. I am working with a very strong, capable, and competent team, and teamwork is really critical if we're going to be effective. Many hands make light work. We know all these sayings. The thing is practice, because life is about practice. Like I said, we can say anything. At the end of the day, the impact comes from what we're prepared to do.
Yeah, I'll get to the question from the audience, but before we move on, what did you learn most about not just yourself, but what did you learn about Bermudians and the electoral process from this most recent general election?
Well, what I learned is that, we're growing. I've said previously that years ago, I felt that we were laying back in lawn chairs when it came to politics in the country. And over time, we've grown to sit up, and now we have people standing up and actively engaged. So that's a positive. What I learned, though, is that there's still a level of maturity that we need to attain collectively in order to really engage the strategies that are going to bring about the type of governance and the policies in the country that we would like to see. There are a lot of obvious challenges that we face, and everyone's looking for solutions. And it's very easy to point a finger at an administration, when in reality, it's what all of us do or don't do on a day-to-day basis that has the greatest impact in our reality in the country. So I just learned that we have a lot more growing to do. And that's everywhere from our team myself and the general public as large. And I feel that if we're open to that growth, that we can really, right, have a huge impact during this period in between elections, right, and have a much greater chance of achieving our ultimate aims the next time an election comes around.
Alrighty. Couple more questions from the audience. We've got Mark Arthur C. Phillips. He says, future honorable member, Mr. Dean, do you feel that we as a society will ever move away from racial politics? He said, it appears many people vote based off race. Let me, before you answer that, that's one of the reasons I think the OPA will never win again, right? Because again, that's the biggest thing. If you remember the language used by the Premier David Burke, he saw them as the only viable option to, challenge the PLP or govern. And that was the angle, right? The elites, that was the term he was using, right? But again, if you have a party of Eugene Deans and Mark Beans and so on, or, individuals or whatnot, you can't use that racial argument. You get me? So, speak to that. Like, whether you believe we will ever move away from race politics, as Mark's asking.
Well, I feel that a lot of positive work was already done during this election to move us away. I know that we released a lot of content targeted towards that. And obviously, it's far more difficult for the current administration or the premier to use race when dealing with someone like myself. However, race has been the only card that the PLP has used. And the more we move away from that, then the better it is for the country. Because again, it doesn't matter how we're divided. If we're divided from religion, if we're divided by class, if we're divided by race, if we're divided by culture, division weakens us. And the fact that race has been so heavily used in the elections, right, has largely contributed to the dismal results that we're seeing and all the failures that continue to increase. Because as Julian Hall said in the video clip that we had circulated, right, online, Bermuda was not only built by Black people, it was also built by white people who have a lot to offer. And he said in his piece that he's not looking for a party that's defined by race, and that's not looking to be a part of a party that is primarily focused on power. He's looking to be a part of an organization that acts in accordance with principle and is solely focused on meeting the needs of the people. So the more people we have speaking to things of that nature, the more people in prominent positions, right, who have the courage to actually address what's been blatantly obvious over the years in terms of the way race has been weaponized in our politics, then the faster we will get beyond it. So I'm happy to see the work that was done in this election campaign, and I look forward to more people getting involved to speak into this race so that we can get beyond it, get to more healing conversations, right? And get to a place where we can optimize on the strengths that we have collectively in this country, regardless of what race you are, culture you're from, religion you're a part of, or class you find yourself in society.
Couple more questions. Charles H. Jefferson II says, does the Emperial Group have an official position on Bermuda moving towards self-determination, aka independence?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, of course, we consider ourselves to be independent individuals, and being independent thinkers, right, is something that's required before a populace is best able to take on independence, right, as a whole. I mean, we've seen all around the world that people or countries have taken on independence in name, but when you really look at it, right, they haven't really become independent in terms of their function, So yes, independence is something that, our group would love to see. However, right, what is key is that we learn from the mistakes that have been made from others and make sure that our movement towards independence is handled in a way where it benefits us collectively rather than leaving us in a compromised position that sees everyone struggle even more than we are now.
Indeed. We've got a comment from WKD Lama. Basically, was there a time that party politics has helped us? I feel that the goal is just to get elected.
Yeah, I feel that, what many people may not realize is that the PLP was actually the first political party in Bermuda. So in that time, party politics would have been seen as a benefit. Prior to that, there were independent candidates that were elected to form the government. And initially, when moving into party politics, primarily with the Black community looking for more representation, then the presence of the PLP was really a positive. And PLP's strength, has really been in being the opposition, because as an opposition, the PLP has always functioned admirably, and really did a lot of work to keep the government, right, or hold the government to account. And I'm sure that largely contributed to the success that we experienced, even though people may not have liked the fact that the UBP was the government for such a long time. The fact that we had a strong opposition meant that there was a lot of growth, even in the Black community. We had a huge middle class, our education was up on a level, the economy was thriving, things of that nature. So your points about the OBA now, right, are further examples of what I'm talking about, because the fact that the OBA has largely underperformed in their role as an opposition is greatly contributing to the way the country is functioning today. And should the OBA find a means to strengthen, right, in their role as the opposition, that can only benefit us going forward. So I hope that they are encouraged by the comments that are coming out of the community. Otherwise, we really have to question what the relevance of the OBA is.
Indeed. We've got Kajay Matthew asking, being that we are British territorial dependent citizens, how can we turn to the UK for more support, if beneficial at all? Is independence a wise strategy?
Well, obviously, we're in a position now as a colony or a British territory, overseas territory, and it's wise to take advantage of whatever benefits that we can get. It is wise to look into being independent, but I think I answered this already. As long as we're learning from the mistakes that were made by other countries, and going independence and making sure that we're really beneficial. It doesn't need to go, we're too far down the road to think that we need to put up this big fight and we're looking at the UK as the enemy and it's like this big war and, now we're independent and now we're severed ties and, the relationship, the quality of the relationship has dwindled. There's no way to do that. Actually, should we say we wish to be independent now, I don't see any resistance coming from, right, the UK. We were just looking recently and having similar conversations internally of, it being upwards of, I think around 200 colonists at one point, or over 100 colonists at least at one point. And now we're down to a very small number, maybe 14. So most colonists have become independent. So there's no fight in it at the moment. So we just have to be wise in terms of how we look at the details of it and make sure that when we're doing it, that we're doing it in a way that ultimately brings value to us. Because otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
Mhm. I don't think independence is going to be our choice. I think we might be pushed towards it, if anything. Second says, is there any relationship between the Imperial Group and the FDM? It feels like there are a lot of similarities between the two. Also, many are aware that Mr. Dean was an FDM candidate in 2020.
Yeah, well, obviously there's a relationship between the Imperial Group and the FDM. I was one of the founding members, of the FDM. I think it's publicly known that Mark Bean is one of my best friends. I've known Mark since kindergarten. I think we were 3 years old when we were first acquainted. And although we don't agree on anything, on everything, I don't know anybody who does agree on anything rather than it's your friend or a relationship. Then there are, the vast majority of things we naturally have in common because we've spent a lot of time together in our formative years and we've shared a lot of similar experiences. And even all the other members of the FDM, are very good friends of mine, other than just the young people who have just started. But, even people like Umar Deal, the limited interaction I've had with him is really to share how impressed I've been with how he's handled himself and how he carries himself and the things that he's said in the community. So the FDM plays a critical role in what things look like going forward. I would like to see the FDM continue to grow and to grow in prominence and for more people to come on board and support it and things of that nature. So yes, there is alignment. Yes, there are relationships. And I think these are the things that we have to reflect on and look to optimize going forward, because what's clear is that we're all going to need to work together if we're going to be looking for change. And I think, the FDM, it would have been clear to the FDM from the beginning that they would have to work with people because the FDM had 10 candidates, Likewise, the independents, although they had 27, I think, independents altogether. The independents also recognized that they would need to work with others, meaning the FDM and the OBA, in order to form a government. I think it was the OBA that had the most challenge, feeling like they would need to work with others in order to assume government, because based on the history of it being a two-party system in Bermuda, they would have felt that they had the strength themselves to win. Now, we knew this going in. We communicated this to the OBA going in, that you don't have the strength to win the election on your own. And we encourage the OBA in that regard to work with others. And, fortunately or unfortunately, they tended to see the FDM and the independents as distractions. People who were getting in the way of them potentially being able to win seats, rather than seeing them as allies based on the principle that an enemy of my enemy is a friend. And as I said a little bit earlier, I think it was Corey Butterfield on a radio broadcast who said that if the combined opposition had focused more on who they wanted to lose rather than who they wanted to win, then the outcome of the election could have looked a lot different.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Eugene, it's been a pleasure. Don't be a stranger. You have a lot going on, but I appreciate you always making time for this platform, this audience, and to engage with us. Hopefully we can have your friend Sophia Cannoner on very soon, because I believe, again, for me, it's not about always agreement and alignment. It's about learning and growth, and sometimes, simple conversations can help us understand one another a bit better. The election, it's over, right? Now we have to live with the results of it, but living with the results doesn't mean we sit down and accept what is. Living with the results could mean, how do we collectively hold the government to account, but also while doing that, what can we do in the community to help improve Bermuda? And I think you've done that. You continue to do it. And just know that this show exists. If you have anything going on that we need to know, that the audience needs to know, that we can be a part of, please reach out. Otherwise, thanks once again, good brother.
Yes, give thanks. And to the general community and to your audience, just know that, right, we've only just begun. We're just getting started. The election was a warm up, and the most significant moves are going to be coming, right, on the eve of that, on the heels of it. So I'm looking forward to what the next year looks like. And I feel that a lot more can be accomplished than many of us have even dared to imagine.
Indeed. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, sir.
All right. Peace and love.
All righty, Eugene Dean, folks, if you appreciated the conversation, please give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. Make sure you share the conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. We're going to take our final break. We're going to be back in about 1 minute, 55 seconds to wrap it up. And I got a daily play for you as well. Stick with us.
Looking for the best care for your pets? Novazok Feed and Supply has everything you need, from top quality foods to toys and supplies. We've got it all. Join our frequent buyer program and earn rewards every time you shop. Plus, we've been awarded the Clever Customer Initiative program for helping you save more. And don't forget, we open an hour early on Saturdays so you can get a head start on your pet care. Visit us today or shop online for easy pickup or delivery. Your pets will thank you.
Join us as we celebrate 5 years and 1,000 plus episodes of community conversations on Bermuda's daily talk show. The Daily Hour Gala takes place on April 26th at LF Wade International Airport. For more information and advance tickets, please send an email to admin@bermudacommunications.com. We look forward to celebrating all that's great about our community with all of you.
Did you know 3 out of 4 people say that they have a good understanding of life insurance? But do they really? When asked how much the yearly cost would be for a 20-year, $250,000 level term life insurance policy for a healthy 30-year-old, 80% overestimated the cost by 5 times the amount. Ready for this? The true cost for that policy is about $220 a year. That's as little as 66 cents a day, or $20 a month. So let's put this into perspective. Compared to other monthly costs, isn't getting life insurance a no-brainer? If you can trim back on some of these expenses just a little bit, it will allow you to dedicate the savings toward an affordable life insurance policy. Contact one of our life insurance agents today to find the right policy for you.
All right. Welcome back. Thanks again to Eugene Dean from the Emperial Group. Again, folks, if you're on Facebook, just hit the like button. Hit the love button. If you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever platform you're on, repost it, like it, love it, share it. Thanks again to the BAC group of companies, Medical House Lenders, and People's Pharmacy for ensuring we can have these conversations with you on a regular basis. It is time for the Daily Play, brought to you by Bermuda Trivia, now available at stores throughout Bermuda. Follow Bermuda Trivia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok to find out why it's Bermuda's favorite trivia game. All right, it's a kind of a name that place. All right, here's your question. No Google. What country was home to the first democratically elected female president? No, it was not Argentina. Anyone else? Anyone else? You all are Googling now. You all are Googling now. All right, the answer all right, Stacey Ann Brown, you got it. Iceland. Forgive me. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir served as Iceland's president from 1980 to 1996, also making her the longest serving non-royal female head of state. Yeah. Yeah. So Iceland, it was Iceland. How you get that, Stacey Ann Brown? You Google that? How you know that? India, no, apparently not. Not apparently not. Mexico, no, not Mexico. Australia, no. Yeah, it was Iceland. Iceland. All right, folks, let's wrap it up. First of all, thank you all for staying locked in for so long this morning. Appreciate it. Regarding the conversation about homelessness, here's the thing. We have another crisis on our hands. But I want us as a community to start looking within to see what it is each and every one of us can do to help resolve such crises. Homelessness is something that we can fix. It's going to take a bit of sacrifice, humility, but we can do it. As far as the conversation with Eugene, I appreciate him. I appreciate the work that he has done and continues to do. I think our political space will be a bit better with more Eugene Deans in there. Because if it's one thing I appreciate and I think he understands is the day we move away from popularity politics is the day we may see true progress in Bermuda. It's not about being popular in this social media age. It's about being effective. All right? All right, let's give you some daily inspiration. Oh, that's the joke book, sorry. Let's go to the daily inspiration book. Yeah. All right, let's find a quote for you. I'm going to land the first quote I see. Here we go. Oh, wow. James Earl Jones. Here's your quote. One of the hardest things in life is having words in your heart that you can't utter. Woo. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Take that how you will, folks. All right, don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. Thanks again to our partners, the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House, Lindo's, and People's Pharmacy for ensuring that we're able to do this with you on a daily basis. As always, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you tomorrow. I'm Jamal Hartman. Please do make it a safe and a great day. We are out. Peace.